Here is a question that has unsettled honest readers for a very long time. Why would Jesus, the very face of divine mercy, keep pointing to one specific cursed valley to describe the fate of a human soul? Most people assume hell is a vague medieval invention. Others, and perhaps you have heard this yourself, say that the word Jesus used, Gehenna, was nothing more than a smoking garbage dump outside Jerusalem. But the truth is far darker and far more important. The most cursed place in the Bible was real. You can stand in it today. It is the Valley of Hinnom, and what happened there is almost too terrible to say out loud. In the next few minutes, I want to take you on a journey from an Old Testament valley of fire to the lips of Jesus in the Gospels, all the way to the altar of the Catholic Mass. Stay with me, because by the end, the curse turns into something you will not expect. So here is the real question underneath all of this. Why did Jesus, who came to reveal the love of the Father, choose the image of a cursed valley to warn us about losing our souls forever? Think of it this way. Imagine the single most condemned site in your city, a place so soaked in death that its very name became a byword for ruin. That is what this valley had become in the memory of Israel. Let me say it as plainly as I can. There was once a real valley outside Jerusalem where something unthinkable happened and God Himself declared it cursed. Centuries later, that same place became the word for final judgment on the lips of Jesus. Why does this matter to you? Because if Jesus pointed to a real place to describe hell, then hell is not a scare story you can simply wave away. It means your freedom is serious. It means the choices you make, even the small and quiet ones, actually carry eternal weight. And it means the mercy offered to you was never cheap. If you're interested in deepening your faith, hit like and tell me where you're watching from. Consider subscribing to stay rooted in Catholic truth. Support our videos, team, and tools, link in description, or scan the QR code on screen. But where does this teaching actually come from? The story begins quietly. In the book of Joshua, chapter 15, verse 8, we read of a simple boundary line, the Valley of Hinnom, marking the border of the tribe of Judah. In Hebrew, it is Gehinnom, meaning the Valley of Hinnom. Nothing about it seems remarkable at first, but something terrible took root there. Within that valley stood a place called the Tophet, a Hebrew word that likely points to a hearth, a place of burning. And there, the prophet Jeremiah tells us the people did the unthinkable. In Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 31, he records that they built high places to burn their sons and daughters in the fire. Kings of Judah, men like Ahaz and Manasseh, passed their own children through the flames to a false god. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century, preserves this same dark memory of kings who sacrificed their own children. Picture the layout for a moment. High above stood Mount Moriah, where God had once stayed the hand of Abraham and where the temple now rose. Far below lay this valley of burning, one mountain of true worship, one valley of false sacrifice, within walking distance of each other. Notice what God does in response. He does not stay silent. Through Jeremiah, he curses the valley and renames it the Valley of Slaughter. Later, the good King Josiah tears the place down, as we read in 2 Kings chapter 23 verse 10. Long before Christ, a Jewish writing known as 1st Enoch, preserved among the Dead Sea Scrolls, already described an accursed valley beside the holy city. It says simply, "This accursed valley is for those accursed forever." The pre-Christian Jewish world already saw this ground as the place of judgment. Now keep that in mind, because here is the turn. The Hebrew Gehinnom became the Greek word Gehenna, and Gehenna is the very word Jesus uses again and again to describe the place of final loss. Here we meet the first great pattern, what we call a type and its fulfillment. The Tophet was a place where fathers destroyed their sons to appease a demon. On a nearby hill, Calvary, the father would one day give his son freely, not to a demon but for the life of the world. The valley of false sacrifice foreshadowed, by stark contrast, the hill of the true sacrifice. The early church understood this. St. Jerome, writing in Bethlehem in the late 4th century, in his commentary on the Gospel of Matthew, identified Gehenna with that very valley of judgment outside Jerusalem. This was not invented later. It was the inheritance of the first Christians, and the church still teaches it plainly. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, in paragraph 1034, says that Jesus often speaks of Gehenna, of the unquenchable fire. So what does this mean practically for you today? Let me start with what almost everyone gets wrong. Many people claim that Gehenna was simply a burning garbage dump, a place where the city trash smoldered outside the walls. It sounds clever. It lets us shrink the warning of Jesus down to something harmless. But here is why that idea took hold and why it fails. The garbage dump explanation comes from a writer more than 1,000 years after Christ. There is no ancient record and no archaeological evidence of a perpetually burning dump in that valley. The misconception is comforting, which is exactly why it spread so easily. The reality is much heavier. The fire of that valley was the fire of sacrificed children, and the judgment Jesus spoke of was the real loss of the soul. So what is hell really? Here is the heart of it, and the logic is simple. The Catechism teaches that the chief punishment of hell is not flame, but separation, the eternal loss of communion with God. God forces no one. Hell is what a freely chosen no to love looks like when a person clings to it to the very end. In Matthew chapter 10 verse 28, Jesus warns us to fear the one who can destroy both soul and body in Gehenna. What is at stake is not a feeling. It is the whole person. Think of it like a door locked from the inside. God never stops knocking, but He will not break down a door you insist on holding shut. And do not think this is only ancient history. Every age builds its own valley, its own altar, where people quietly sacrifice their children, their families, and their futures to gods that promise everything and deliver ash. Here is a parallel worth pausing on. In the Old Covenant, the fire in the valley below the city was a fire of death, while the fire on the altar of the temple above was the fire of true worship. That second fire did not end. It was fulfilled. The one true sacrifice of Christ is made present on the altar at every Mass, where the Lord gives Himself not to consume us, but to feed us. What does this mean for your daily life? It means small things matter. The habit you keep feeding, the grudge you will not release, the prayer you keep postponing. These are the hinges on which a soul slowly turns toward God or away from Him. So receive the sacraments. Go to confessions. Sit with the Lord even when you feel nothing. This is exactly why I keep making these videos, so that you never have to walk through these questions alone. And if any of this stirs a deeper wound, please speak with a trusted priest or spiritual director, because some burdens are meant to be carried in the light with help. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Some of our Protestant brothers and sisters read those same words, unquenchable fire, and reach a different conclusion. They argue that the lost are not punished forever but are simply destroyed, consumed once and for all. It is a serious reading, and it flows from a real reverence for Scripture. I do not treat it lightly. But notice what Jesus actually quotes. In Mark chapter 9 verse 48, He draws directly on Isaiah chapter 66 verse 24, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. The language points to something ongoing, not something finished. The Church has held across the centuries that this speaks of a loss that endures. Our Jewish friends bring a different and beautiful emphasis. In much of Jewish tradition, Gehinnom is understood largely as a place of purification, a refining that lasts for a season before the soul moves on. We should receive that insight with reverence, not brush it aside. And here is something striking. The Catholic faith holds a related truth in its teaching on purgatory, a real purification for those being made ready for heaven. We are far closer here than many people realize. What neither view should ever become is a weapon to frighten or to divide. The valley was cursed because of innocent blood, and the answer to all that blood is not more fear. It is the blood of Christ, poured out in love, which speaks a better word than the blood that once cried out from that ground. So where does this leave us? Let us draw the thread together. A valley of fire, where sons were destroyed for a false god, was cursed by God and became the very word for final judgment. And then, on a hill just outside that same city, the true Son was offered by the Father, not destroyed but given, and 3 days later, raised. The fire of the Tophet was answered by the fire of the Spirit, and the false altar in the valley was answered by the one true altar we approach at every Mass. What was prefigured in horror was fulfilled in love. So go and live as though it is true. Pray today, even briefly. Open the Gospel of Mark and read chapter 9 slowly. Return to the sacraments and especially to confession. If this helped you, share it with a friend, subscribe, and check out our web app for daily Catholic resources and soul search. The most cursed ground in the Bible became the map to the most merciful gift in history.